Does the shadowy form of a ghostly principal still preside over this school?
Who lingers in the eerie basement boiler room?
Do sounds of previous inhabitants echo through the empty halls?
Find out the answers to these questions and more as we uncover the scholastic hauntings and history from the Farrar Schoolhouse in Maxwell, Iowa.
I'm Sarah.
And I'm Erica.
And this is The Haunted Atlas, a Haunted U.S. podcast. In the interest of fully exploring history of certain locations, The Haunted Atlas may discuss sensitive or disturbing topics. Listener discretion is advised.
Standing in stark opposition to the Iowan cornfields that surround it, Farrar Schoolhouse, once a community center for education, has survived full abandonment. Being occupied at first by homemakers, then paranormal celebrities, this schoolhouse has lived numerous lives and has the ghosts to prove it. Today, we are in Iowa, close to Des Moines, in a town called Farrar. So in the early 1900s, there was a local farmer in the town, and his name was C.C. Geddes. And he must have recognized the fast growth that was occurring in Farrar due to a few different things that were happening around this time period. So in the early 1900s, agriculture was industrializing, and these farm-heavy regions around the U.S. were prospering, which is a pretty popular thing in history.
Right, and that makes sense, because every time I hear about Iowa, I feel like people are like, and there's so many cornfields.
Yes. See, but here's the thing. I always get Iowa mixed up with another state whose main thing is potatoes. Or is that
Idaho?
Idaho. There it is.
They're very different geographic locations.
Yes, I know. And I always get them mixed up because they're both eyes.
Yeah, very different product as well.
Yes. Now, in addition to this agricultural boom, a rail line was being constructed through Farrar. And because Des Moines was also expanding, Farrar was kind of able to ride its coattails into this new century.
That makes sense. If you have to reach a major trade point, then you have to go through the nearby towns, even if they're small.
Yes, exactly. And so the town is prospering. And in 1919 specifically, C.C. Geddes donated 6 acres of his farmland to the township so that a consolidated school could be constructed, because up until this point, there had been none.
Correct me if I'm wrong, 6 acres seems like a lot for a schoolhouse.
I'm wondering, too, if it was like a yard. Like, you know how like schoolhouses have like the yard for recess and like...
That's true. And I guess I'm trying to think of like how much space does a school take up? Because I guess back then it could have been more flat than built up, but this one is multiple stories, right?
I believe so, yes. And I always think of schoolhouses in history as being one room, but we're in the early 1900s. It's like, it probably wasn't.
Right, not at all.
I'm thinking we're back in like the 1800s for some reason. It was constructed on the land. It was constructed there specifically because there was apparently a lack of adequate schoolhouses in Iowa, like across the state. So this was supposed to kind of help.
That makes sense then. They want the land because it's going to be a larger building to accommodate the needs, not just a schoolhouse. That makes a lot more sense.
Yes. Now, despite some controversy with how much the construction cost for the town, the school was built and was officially dedicated on April 1st, 1922.
Were people upset that it was too expensive?
I believe so, yeah. I think it was just, if you think about it, and this is just my opinion, this is not anything like historically based, but I'm thinking Des Moines was the real town of Iowa at the time. And so Farrar, I think C.C. Geddes was like trying to make it more prosperous, but it had the economic environment of a smaller town.
Because I was thinking, wow, they didn't even have to purchase the land, but I guess construction in general can still be pretty pricey.
Oh yeah, because the building included boiler heating, electric lights, and indoor plumbing. And so because of how large and progressive it was, the building did draw in students from a large surrounding area, but must have been expensive.
Right, but fancy.
Yes, it basically became an educational center in Iowa.
That's really cool.
Yeah. According to the official historical timeline from the website, there was actually a death in the building in 1945. The story presented is of Sarah Mitchell, an 8-year-old who fell down the main staircase during a severe thunderstorm. Now, the story itself isn't verified, but it is in the historical timeline.
That's so sad. So she was there during school and they had a severe thunderstorm drill and she fell?
Yes, which is so, so sad. And at 8 years old, I think that's 3rd grade, if I remember correctly. That's just so young.
Ugh, that's terrible.
Yes. Now, once we hit the 1970s and 1980s, the country's farming community is struggling economically. But fortunately, the school is still going strong, and I think because of how large and well-reaching it was.
That's interesting to me from a tax perspective because, the schools are funded from taxes from the community. So if the community is not doing well, you would think that the school would suffer. But it's interesting that it's still prospering.
Yes. And I was thinking the same thing because obviously, the farming community is a huge part of American history and has at this time even now, major impacts on the American economy. Even though the farming community is struggling, education's always needed, so it shouldn't be too affected, but this particular school wasn't, but the surrounding education I read was. And again, I think it's because this was such a hub, but the other thing was I researched more into the farm crisis, and on Iowa PBS, they talk about the farm crisis of the 1980s, and we're basically not just talking about small struggles here. So a lot of families were being forced off of their land, and less population and families being displaced meant that education would have taken a backseat.
That's wild. When you think about something like that, I feel like you do think of the 1800s. This was 45 years ago.
Yeah.
That is really wild to think about. And I guess that does make sense as well because if your farm is struggling, you might pull your kids out of school so that they can help at the farm, and then less people are attending in general.
Yes, that's exactly what I was thinking, is that for them, it was more important to kind of then take care of the home and try to figure out what the next move was.
Yeah.
Now, it wasn't until then, the early 2000s, so we're talking about 20 years later, basically, that the education in Farrar needed an update. So, on May 3rd, 2002, the building was closed in favor of newer and larger facilities. Only 4 years later, in 2006, Jim and Nancy Oliver bought the property in hopes of turning it into their private home.
This is such a trend that I feel like we're seeing people converting schoolhouses and churches into private homes.
Yes.
And it's such a weird thing to me. Maybe I'm too traditional, but I would not want to live in an old schoolhouse.
No, I wouldn't either. I feel like it would be too spacious for me and not homey enough. I really admire people who turn school buses or vans into their home because that must, honestly, the other direction. It must be so small, such a small enclosed space. But yeah, I think we're just falling behind. I think non-traditional homes is turning into a thing.
Right, but they were ahead of the curve. This is 2006.
Actually, yes, that is true. And what's even more interesting is the parts that they didn't live in, because as we said, it's very spacious. They actually opened up to paranormal investigators because they were experiencing some of the hauntings that we're going to talk about themselves.
That is really interesting. I always wonder if I was in a house that was haunted, would I still live there or would I leave? But I guess it depends on the severity of the haunting.
That's exactly how I feel because I always feel like if I am able to kind of connect with the spirit that might be in my house, I'd be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of living there, maybe trying to connect with them and see if I can make their stay any easier while I'm there. But if it's malicious hauntings, I don't think I could do it.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
And we believe in it. I think that makes it even more intense of a thing.
Yeah.
Now, that brings us into the present. But a building like this doesn't just vanish into history. Decades of footsteps, voices, laughter, and loss have a way of lingering, especially in a place that stood at the center of a community for so long. And according to countless visitors, investigators, and former owners, Farrar Schoolhouse never really emptied out. Because once the lights went off and the halls fell silent, something else may have started making itself known.
Sheriff, we got a lot to talk about.
Welcome to Twin Peaks. I'm your Twin Peaks veteran, Special Agent Matt Hanna,
And I'm your first-time viewer, Sheriff Hannah.
And each week, we're visiting David Lynch and Mark Frost's Twin Peaks on our new show, Welcome to Twin Peaks, a Twin Peaks rewatch podcast.
Entering the town of Twin Peaks.
We're talking dreams, damn fine coffee,
A damn fine cup of coffee.
back we're talking mysteries,
And asking the important questions like, who really killed Laura Palmer? Are the owls what they seem? And why does this town feel like a nightmare you don't want to wake up from?
It is happening again.
Whether you're a longtime Twin Peaks resident or stepping into the Black Lodge for the very first time, Welcome to Twin Peaks is your guide through the woods.
What kind of fantastic trees have you got growing around here?
New episodes every week wherever you get podcasts.
And be sure to follow our socials at Welcome to Twin Peaks Podcast for schedules and opportunities to call and write into the show.
I'm gonna turn it upside down!
The mysteries are dense and the secrets are dark.
We'll see you in Twin Peaks with a fresh cup of coffee.
Having seen thousands of people pass through its halls, it's no surprise that Farrar Schoolhouse is said to be haunted. In many cases, we've seen claims that hauntings start when a building is abandoned. But the claims here actually start while the school was still in use and date back to the 1980s. It was actually said to be common knowledge that there were mysterious figures that roamed the halls because staff and students alike reported them.
That's actually so cool and kind of crazy that it coincides with when the farm crisis happened.
That's what I was thinking too. I wonder if perhaps less attendance, if that did happen, kind of allowed these hauntings to rise to the top, because perhaps if there was less people, it was quieter, etc., then that would have more space for people to notice things.
Yeah, that's such a good point.
So the main report was a mysterious figure that roamed the halls, but there are also reports of slamming doors without cause. And normally I'm skeptical of something like this because in older buildings, you never know. But in something that was functioning as a school, if this slamming was caused by physics of, normal, not paranormal, then you would absolutely fix it. Because if you have a door that's slamming repeatedly, that's going to interfere with class time. You're not going to let that persist. So to me, this slamming must be paranormal. But what do you think?
That's a good question. Let's say they investigated the doors, right? And they realized we need to fix them because this is what's causing the issue. But because of the farm crisis, maybe they didn't have enough funds to fix them. Then it might have stopped being reported as a paranormal happening because then everybody would know. We just can't figure out we just don't have the funds to fix it. And so to me, that also kind of means it might be paranormal.
And to perhaps give it even more credit, these slams are still reported today when people investigate.
Oh, yeah.
So it seems like it has not stopped.
Now, you said there was a roaming figure, right? Is that just a shadow figure up and down the halls?
Yes. And people have some guesses about who it might be, but overall, people say that that's the main thing that is seen there. And I think perhaps people say that that's the main thing that's seen there because you could be there for a minute and see that, versus you might need to be there longer to really get some of the other hauntings, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Honestly, that would really freak me out, though, if I was a student and I just saw a dark figure walking down the hallway.
Right. And the other thing is, a shadow figure walking through the hallway is going to stand out during the school day, versus slamming doors and things like that might not stick out as much.
Yeah.
Because there are other auditory hauntings, and they include knocking and footsteps. But again, during the school day, that might not be abnormal. Now, if you're in the building alone and you hear those things, of course, you could attribute it to the paranormal. But during school, no one would be able to attribute that to paranormal.
No, because I that almost gives more credence to your idea that with less students, people were able to report things more. Because I agree. How could you know for a fact that it wasn't a student that just disappeared behind the door or something?
Right. And the other auditory haunting is children laughing, which, of course, during the time that it's a school, no one would report that as paranormal. But now people definitely think that it's paranormal. And I think that that's a haunting that's very congruent with the fact that it was a school.
I just imagine there's like one teacher who taught at this time who kept hearing children laughing and kept going to bust them, and then like there's no one there and they're just like, one day I'm gonna get these kids.
They think that the kids skipped class or something. That's funny. They're like, I hear footsteps and then I hear children laughing.
Right.
I'm gonna catch you.
Eventually it'll come out.
In one of the old offices on the top floor, there's said to be a tall shadow figure. And an investigator actually sketched a drawing of what they saw, and the photo still hangs in the office today.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, and it's very useful because a lot of times I think people can say, oh, I saw a figure in here, and you don't have a way of telling if it's the same figure unless, of course, it's been captured on some source of media. But many guests use this as a reference and have confirmed that they've seen the same figure there.
That is so cool. And honestly, super awesome of Jim and Nancy Oliver to not have taken stuff like that down while they were living there.
Right. And I think, why don't we all start doing this in the community, you know? If you see a figure and you can't capture it on media, sketch it. But I guess I say that, and if I tried to do that, it would look like a stick figure.
Yeah, I have a self-portrait of mine when I tried to be artsy and take an art class in college, and it is horrific. So I don't think anyone should ever look at any of my drawings as a reference point.
We need like one of those police sketch artists.
Yes. Yes.
Every paranormal team must employ a sketch specialist. People say that when they see this figure, they have a sense of authority as if it was a principal or administrator. And I honestly wonder what the spirit thinks about having the photo on the wall. Like, perhaps it's a feedback loop. The spirit's like, yeah, that's me hanging on the wall, and then gets more authority. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I mean, it's very likely that given this was an office, it is the office of the principal or administrator, and that's the person haunting it. But it also must feel kind of cool to have your photo on the wall.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Because, you know, I'm sure one of the hard things about being a spirit, if we can
Speculate.
if we can speculate, is that you may not be able to connect with people as much as you would like to. So to actually have something on the wall that allows people to like recognize you and relate to you as like what you actually are is probably really cool.
That's true. The flip side of the coin could be that the spirit doesn't want to be seen. They're like, oh my gosh, my photo's on the wall, like these meddling kids.
Oh no, that would be really sad.
I think it's more likely the first one.
Hopefully, because I'm assuming if they, you know, if they are here in their afterlife, it's hopefully because they had a great time being a principal or administrator and like loved being in this environment.
And I think because there's no real negativity that seems to surround it, clearly they don't mind that much.
Yes.
As seems to be common in old schools, the boiler room is also haunted. The spirit of a janitor is said to be here. The janitor's shadow figure is often reported by present-day visitors. And I think it makes sense that it wasn't reported when it was a school, because there wouldn't have been a lot of people down there. But now that it's a paranormal hotspot, people are in the boiler room more.
Yes, agreed.
Some visitors have even captured recordings said to include the janitor's spirit's voice, telling them to get out. There are several other EVPs that have been captured, but that's not all, because there's sometimes the sound of children playing in the boiler room. To my previous point of there would likely not be children down there when it was a school, but if there's just an overall residual haunting, maybe it's just kind of echoing throughout the school in general.
That's possible. I'm also wondering if the janitor is talking to the spirits of the children that are in this boiler room and telling them to leave.
That was a thought that I had. What if the janitor is kind of lingering down there to watch over the children?
Yes.
Make sure that they stay safe.
Yes. And then when more people come down, he's like, can you get out of here? Why are you entering a boiler room?
I like that in our analysis of the ghosts here, they're all so exasperated.
Maybe that's a reflection of what I'm feeling today.
Maybe it's a reflection of how we felt about school. We're like, we were straight A students, but we were tired. A more general haunting is the report of strange smells in the building. With an old building, especially one that hasn't been upkept since it did used to be the school, I can imagine that this is not paranormal. scents can linger in general with things like wood, etc. And if there's no one there actively cleaning or monitoring the place, then I find it highly unlikely that these scents are paranormal.
Yeah, I don't know if Jim and Nancy were two people who reported this, but they lived there also for a bit. So some of the smells could be attributed to like a residence.
That's true. Or even just like a building decomposing, since so many of the school items are still in the building. Imagine if like wood is decomposing and you might not know it off the bat.
Right.
The school does offer paranormal tours and has been featured on numerous ghost hunting TV shows. Like you said, it was also featured on Sam and Colby's YouTube channel. If you've been, we'd be interested to hear your stories from Farrar Schoolhouse. Email the team at hauntedus.com and include Haunted Atlas Farrar Schoolhouse in the subject, or find us on social media at hauntedus. Tune into our next episode to see where we drop the pin on our adventure across the Haunted US. This episode of Haunted Atlas was presented by Sarah Sweeney and Erica Barrett. It was supported by research from Haunted US head writer Mitch Goth, with production assistance by David Sweeney, and music by Colleen Johnson. Our executive producer is Brandon Rugsey. Haunted Atlas is a production of Haunted US. Visit hauntedus.com for more information.